Today's story is a Hollow's End, Charlie's Department Store crossover. Written by Ashley Watson, the author of the Charlie's Department Store series. Book 2 of this series is out now, so please check out the description below for a link, and I hope you'll support the author if you can. Now, on to today's story. The first ever Hollow's End, Charlie's Department Store crossover. Please subscribe and leave a comment to let us know what you think. Lacy was a very particular woman. She always made sure her windshield was clean and unblemished for prime sunset picture taking. She used a diaper bag as her backpack because she liked how much storage it offered and the cute pattern it had. Her coffee cup always contained a homemade caramel frappe because she hated the way our diner's coffee tasted. And I also noticed she had a nervous habit of twirling one wavy blonde strand of hair around a finger, but I didn't say anything about it. For as long as I could remember, I had been able to read people. By that, I mean just looking at someone, I could tell who they were as a person, their favorite things, and maybe even a little about their past. Sometimes, it took spending some time with them to get a better reading. It really just depended on the person. A lot of the things I knew about Lacy had been learned by watching her, but it had only taken a glance to know she was a sweet, albeit eccentric person. I liked being able to read people, but Lacy was my favorite person to read. "I need a bacon, egg, and cheese sandwich for table 3, she said as she zoomed around the deli counter. Relinquishing the coffee pot in her left hand to its home, she noticed my eyes on her and asked, "What?" I removed the grape sucker from my mouth before speaking. "What yourself?" As one of the line cooks slid an omelet through the serving hatch, she grabbed it and swerved around the counter once more. "You're staring," she responded, as she left the plate with its partaker. "I'm observing," I corrected. Observing people was my favorite thing to do, and Lacy was very easy to observe. Not only was she an open book, but she was also very pleasant on the eyes, if you catch my drift. Golden blonde hair, tan skin, and an artsy style. She may not be your cup of tea, but she sure was mine. "Come hang out with me," I told her after our shift. She rolled her eyes. "I wouldn't be caught dead in your bachelor pad." "Then come alive," I said with a smirk, and she cracked a smile. On each of her canine teeth, she had a heart-shaped tooth gem, and they twinkled under the diner's neon lights. "You don't have to stay the night if you don't want to. Just hang out for a while." She stayed the night. So, I guess the bachelor pad wasn't that bad. I awoke to her cuddling my chest, and she awoke to me admiring her. "Morning," I said softly. She sat up and stretched with a yawn. "Morning. Did you sleep well?" I asked. "Any dreams?" She rolled her eyes. "What, do you think that dreams are an effect you have on women or something?" I was actually being serious. "But if that's your way of calling me dreamy..." I gave her a shit-eating grin, and she flung a pillow at my head in response. She stood up from the bed and began pulling her clothes back on, starting with her shirt. "I hardly ever have dreams. Do you?" "Every night." "Of what?" she asked while pulling on her pants. I could tell by her tone that she was genuinely curious. I shrugged and began picking at the stitching of the pillow she had hit me with. "Memories, maybe?" "Memories of what?" "A town, and its weird inhabitants. A small yellow house with a white picket fence. An aged wooden barn, with several no trespassing signs attached to its ancient boards, probably due to the growls that emanate from within." I shrugged again. "Stuff." She scoffed, mock disbelief on her face. "Oh my God, I finally found a topic that'll shut you up." I threw the pillow back at her while shouting, "Here's something to shut you up." I hit her in the face, and she immediately leaped at me, giggling as we began to playfully tussle. Suddenly, a banging came from above, followed by an irritating squawk. The bird in question was actually Mrs. Fetterman. Any amount of noise from my apartment that she deemed excessive was addressed with foot stomps and unintelligible scoldings. I'd only ever seen the old bag once, and based on the remaining sprigs of curl she had on her head, she really did remind me of a bird. Stereotypical case of a senior citizen that never gets visits from her family. I'd feel bad, but I think I understood why they never came to visit. "What time do you work today?" Lacy asked, as she threw her hair up into a messy bun. "I don't." She poked me in the side playfully, and said, "Jimmy let you get the day off, but not me?" I sighed. "No, I'm not coming in. I'm leaving." Her face softened into a frown. "What do you mean you're leaving?" I flattened onto the bed. "I don't know." In truth, I didn't feel like I belonged here, but admitting that felt impossible. Almost like it was trapped in my throat. "Where are you gonna go?" "The yellow house, with the picket fence," I wanted to say. "I don't know," I repeated instead. She nodded and swallowed hard, while her eyes moved down to the mattress. "Well, can you let me know when you get there? Maybe I could come visit." Instead of responding, I kissed her forehead. 30 minutes after she left, my Uber arrived. Next stop? A town by the name of Hollow's End. I slung my backpack onto my shoulder just as he honked. Mark, my driver, was in his mid-50s. Plumes of gray had begun to salt and pepper his dark hair, and he had the forehead wrinkles, crow's feet, and smile lines of someone who had raised 2, maybe 3 children. He probably picked this gig up for some extra money, a family vacation, or maybe an anniversary present for the wife. Something expensive, but not yet decided. Toward the beginning of the 2-hour drive, he attempted to make small talk, but my short answers made it clear I wasn't in the mood. It's not that I didn't want to talk. What Lacy insinuated about me talking a lot was true, but I just had a lot on my mind. For instance, why had I chosen Hollow's End as my destination? Why was it this town in particular that I felt so drawn to? Did it contain the yellow house and its white picket fence from my dreams? I knew very little about the town, except for the fact that its population rarely interacted with their neighbors. It had become an urban legend that the local teens dared each other to enter. A time-honored tradition, really. I remember not so fondly piling into a pickup truck with several friends that I later graduated with. Derek, the most sober out of our group, drove us to the town's edge, and we emptied the truck like it was a clown car. "Go stand by the sign, Andrew," exclaimed Jenny, her cheeks reddened by the alcohol in her body, and the chill in the air. Snickering, she poked an elbow into Derek's side, like they had an ongoing inside joke. The annoyed look he gave her told me they didn't. I shook my head. "You go do it," I told her. For just a second, she let out a horrendous guffaw of a laugh, before she remembered who we were with, and then her laughter swapped to her best impression of a girlish giggle. "I knew you were a pussy," she shrieked, before glancing toward the guys for approval. My brother Jeremy rolled his eyes. "Leave him alone, Jen." "Oh, shut up," yelled Jenny. "You're only taking up for him because you feel bad he isn't your real brother. That's why he's so fucking weird." "Why would you say that?" snapped Jeremy. He turned to his best friend. "Bryce, get your fucking girlfriend." Bryce, who was almost as shit-faced as Jen, tried to wrangle her up and take her back to the truck. I zoned out just as she began to slap at him like an annoyed cat, my eyes trailing to the town's faded sign. Honestly, I had felt a little scared, but not for the same reasons everyone else was fearful of Hollow's End. Sure, I'd heard the rumors about people who had wandered into the town and never returned. Or returned with 3 eyes, 2 heads, and an elephant's trunk. Who hadn't? But I wasn't stupid enough to believe it. The reason I was scared was because of its reputation. It was a weird town, and as you could have already guessed, I was an outcast. Being adopted in a small town had its disadvantages. If I told anyone that night how badly I did want to step over the border of Hollow's End, the bullying would have only gotten worse. I hadn't planned to fall asleep during the Uber drive, but to my surprise, my eyes popped open as I felt the gears of the car being shifted to park. I leaned my head upward and looked out the window. We were parked beside that familiar yet dingy sign that I had seen only 5 years before. Hollow's End. Population... Whatever population had once been listed there had been scraped off, most likely by another group of bored teenagers. My weary eyes shifted to the driver, who still had his back to me. "This isn't my stop. I'm going to the motel." "I'm sorry, man. This is as far as I go," he said, still facing forward. There was fear in his voice, and he was doing his best to avoid my reflection in the rearview mirror. "Then why accept the ride?" "I need money, but I don't need it enough to enter this place." With a sigh, I threw my backpack over my shoulder and opened the car door. "Good luck," he shouted through the window after I had exited. He didn't wait for a response. Like a bat out of hell, he whipped the car around and zoomed back the way we had come. I watched him fly down the highway for a few seconds before continuing my journey. In the distance, I could see a cluster of buildings forming a downtown area. Even further out, scattered at random like orbital electrons, sat several other buildings. Businesses, homes, and the like. It took a 15-minute walk for me to get to the closest one. A rinky-dink shack on the outskirts of town. Based on the remaining distance, I would guesstimate that downtown was another 15-minute walk away. I decided to check out the shack. Because, why not? I love abandoned places, and it's not like I had anything else to do. Today was about going with the flow. It was a simple square of a building, roughly 8 by 8 feet with 2 windows, one on the front and one on the back. The front one was boarded up, preventing me from seeing inside. Thick vinery ringed the doorway and branched out over the exterior walls. A quick tug on the door handle told me it was locked, despite clearly not having the hardware for it. Unless someone locked it from the inside. A shiver traveled down my spine, but I shrugged it off. No one would be living this far out, especially in a structure as run down as this one. Its wooden boards were so beaten and battered that it looked one gust of wind from toppling. For peace of mind, as I trailed down the building's length to get to the back window, I delicately knocked my knuckles against the wall. No sounds returned from inside, which was reassuring enough to calm me. I pulled a leafy tendril away from the window to peer through the grimy glass. A quick scan of the small interior showed a dusty table with 2 chairs and a couple of boxes of unknown items. In a flash, a pair of eyes filled the pane, and I jolted backward. My grip had tightened around the vines, causing a section of them to yank free as my hand moved along with me. The eyeballs bulged in their sockets, the irises a ring of darkness barely distinguishable from the pupil. "Are you a tourist?" they croaked eagerly. The voice was inhuman, a mixture of hisses and groans, jumbled together to form just coherent syllables. I pictured a jaw with sharp teeth stretching into a smile, and above it, the eyes that were currently locked upon me. No. I live here." Not exactly a lie, but not entirely true. This answer seemed adequate to them, causing their eyes to narrow like they were disappointed. "Do you know any?" "Know any tourists?" "Yes," they hissed. I shook my head in an attempt to hide that I had begun to shake. Not once during this entire encounter had the eyes blinked, and for some reason, that made me uncomfortable more than anything else about this mysterious specter. Instead of responding, they backed away from the window, and I did as well. Moving as quickly as my feet would allow, I fled the area and headed towards downtown. My feet ached by the time I arrived, but the amusing sight awaiting me made it better. Splayed out like a starfish in the middle of the road was a man wearing only a pair of aviator shades and boxers. The cotton fabric was white with red hearts polka dotting it. A coffee cup reading "Number 1 Sheriff" sat on the blacktop beside him. The sight made me snort, which made his eyes pop open. A smirk spread across his slightly stubbled face. "Well, hello there, young man. What brings you to Hollow's End?" "What are you, the welcoming committee?" "Perhaps I am," he responded. "You know, the other locals might not take too kindly to you being a peeping Tommy." I cocked an eyebrow in intrigue. "Does it really count if you're laid out for all the town to see?" He pondered my response for a moment. "I guess not. Now, back to my previous question. What brings you to Hollow's End?" This time, he asked with a bit of skepticism, like he was uncertain if my intentions were good or not. It was the first hint of emotion I had been able to pick up on him, and that was a bit unnerving. I couldn't read anything about him. Not his personality, or interests, or worries. He appeared as a blank slate in my mind, and that had never happened before. Was he able to shield himself somehow? "I think I'm from here," I told him honestly. He removed his sunglasses and gave me a quizzical squint. We both remained silent for a moment, as he stared at me and I stared at him. And then, "You're Bena Smart's boy." I cocked my head to the side. "Really? That's all it took?" "You got her nose," he said as he replaced the sunglasses in their previous position. "And her smart-ass attitude." "I think you're full of shit. How would you know that after just meeting me?" He chuckled, as if that statement was the most amusing thing he'd heard in a while. "I may be a piece of shit, but I sure ain't full of shit." I scoffed. "I can tell when people are bluffing, and you for sure are." This was a lie. I still couldn't get a read on him, so I was just guessing. Standing up from the ground, he slapped a hand to his heart. "I promise, from the bottom of my heart, that you can believe me." "If that's true, then take me there," I said. "Take me to her." "To the Smarts farm?" I nodded. He sighed while pulling a bottle of liquor literally from nowhere. He took a swig from it before nodding. "Okay, on one condition." I cocked my head to let him know to continue. "You buy me another one of these," he said, while holding up the half-empty bottle. After making a pit stop at a very tiny gas station, we headed towards the Smarts farm, as the drunken stranger called it. He also informed me that his name was Randy, and after I asked him if he actually was the town's sheriff, he just laughed. I hoped that he wasn't. Of all the things I had pictured from my mom, being a farmer wasn't one of them. Then again, I had always dreamed of a barn. I just hadn't dreamed of her in it, and this drunk may not even know what he's talking about. He smelled like a brewery, and I'm sure he had enough alcohol in him to put a frat house out of commission. This could turn out to be a wild goose chase. But what if there was a chance it could be a golden goose? "You know," he began as we walked down an overgrown sidewalk. Every word he said unleashed the odor of liquor into the air. "What if I had been busy?" "I think the only thing you have on today's schedule is becoming roadkill," I remarked. "For your information, I was actually taking one of my afternoon naps," he countered. "With a schedule as busy as mine, you gotta get your beauty rest where you can." "How far do we have to walk?" He shrugged and took a sip from his brown bag bottle before responding. "Maybe 5 or 10 minutes." "And you don't have a car?" I had done a lot of walking today, and I was regretting making a pair of Converse my go-to footwear. He laughed again, but didn't answer the question. It was silent for a few moments, before he pointed off in the distance to the direction in front of us. "If you go that ways, you hit the swamp," he explained. As we passed the entryway to the neighborhood, He hooked a thumb towards it. "This neighborhood here is where your Uncle Jimmy fought a pack of mutant mongooses." I laughed at his joke, but he stayed straight-faced, like that fact was serious business. He pointed to an abandoned building to our right before I could ask any more about it. "Your mom lives there." I nodded, taking all of this in. "Can you tell me anything about my dad?" "Nope," he said bluntly, before throwing back his bottle again. He didn't say anything else until we turned onto a driveway fashioned from red clay and gravel. At the end of it sat that familiar yellow house, and its barn counterpart. A beat-up forest green pickup was parked roughly a foot away from the front porch steps, like the driver had to pump on the brakes to avoid colliding with them. As we maneuvered around it, the porch steps creaked under our feet. Anxiety filled me as Randy knocked on the door, and I began to wonder if this was all a mistake. What if these people didn't even know who I was? But then, the door opened to a woman with dyed cherry red hair, sun-damaged skin, and my nose. "Damn," I said to my tour guide. "You were right." "I usually am," he said with a smirk. He turned back toward the woman. "Bena, you got a delivery. Well, you already delivered him once before. No DNA test needed with an attitude like his. Took one conversation for me to realize he's bitchy Bena's kid." "Randy!" exclaimed the woman. "Now you don't come on my porch speaking that ugly language. You already know Billy is ready to blow a gasket in your ass." The woman didn't realize how ironic it was that she was now speaking that ugly language, but I couldn't help but snicker. She finally took notice of me, and her eyes widened. "What on earth, Maddie?" "It's actually Andrew now," I said sheepishly, which was incredibly unlike me. This was the most anxiety I had ever felt in my life. I'm sorry for showing up randomly." "Oh, no, sugar," she responded with a wide smile, before ushering me inside. "I knew you'd come. I just wasn't sure when." Randy tried to follow me, but she quickly blocked him. "Not a chance in hell, Randy. Not after you unleashed them geese in our yard." My eyes widened, but I said nothing. "Hey, they were golden geese," he argued. "They shit gold." "They ain't shit nothing but blanks, Randy," she yelled before slamming the door. She turned to me, and her grin returned once more. "Would you like something to drink, hon? Maybe a glass of sweet tea or a Coke?" "No, thank you," I answered. "You said you knew I was coming?" I asked with intrigue. She sighed and motioned for me to have a seat on a floral love seat. Its colors were atrocious, but it was very plush underneath me. "Have you ever known something would happen before it did? Or understood someone without truly knowing them?" I shrugged. "I know things about people, but I just figured I was an empath or something." Sure, it seemed weird, but I didn't think I had superpowers or anything. I could read people, but I'm sure anyone could with a bit of practice. Some were just born with it, and others had to work at it, just like any ability. She shook her head. "It's similar to that, but not exactly. You see," before she could finish her train of thought, a pig burst through the front door. A pig with wings. As it let out oinks of panic, it zoomed around the large room, evading capture via a farmer who had run in behind it. Bena sighed before standing up from the couch, and grabbing a net I hadn't noticed before. Brandishing it, she quickly scooped up the escaped bovine. The unnamed farmer grabbed the squealing animal by its wings, and escorted it outdoors once more. Bena sat down beside me again and closed my mouth, which had been gaping open, with one hand. "Was that my father?" I asked after a moment of silence. "Mm-hmm," she confirmed. "It was. He's a bit busy, or I would have asked him to sit down and talk with us." I nodded. "Did that pig have wings?" An amused smile filled her face. Even the apples of her cheeks resembled mine. It felt strange to finally learn where my physical features had come from. "You never heard about Hollow's End, have you?" she asked. I shook my head. "No, I have. I just didn't believe any of it." "What have you heard?" About a man with an elephant trunk?" She laughed in amusement. "Oh, Uncle Earl, he's a hoot. Or, should I say, a snort." I gave her joke a half-hearted smile. "Is that an elephant joke?" She frowned. "Yeah, but it didn't land very well. Hopefully you got your sense of humor from your father." "So, you guys see strange things every day? Like flying pigs?" "Oh, the pigs are intentional." My eyes widened. "What type of farm is this if you're breeding flying pigs?" "Why, a flying pig farm, of course," she boasted enthusiastically. "The best and only flying pig farm this side of the Mississippi. Would you like me to show you around?" The tour began at the small garden behind the house. Plump tomato plants and gargantuan corn stalks took up the majority of the plots, along with cucumbers, squash, and jalapenos. Besides a small pen containing a couple goats, there wasn't much else to see in the yard, so we headed for the barn. Just like I had heard so many times in my dreams, growling could be heard from within. Concern furrowed my brow, but Bena seemed unfazed as we moved through the doorway. As soon as we entered, the stench of blood and shit began to overpower me. Pens lined either side of the barn, each containing 1 or 2 pigs each. To prevent them from fleeing, they had collars around their beefy necks. Chains were attached to a loop on the collars, allowing them to roam about their confinement but venture no further. A string of curses drew my attention toward the middle of the barn. Billy was standing there. In front of him was an absolute behemoth of a creature. To accommodate, its collar and chains were much larger. Its bulbous belly squirmed. The skin pulled taut as snouts and hooves poked and prodded below the surface. Although it was easily quadruple his size, my father stood behind the beast's hindquarters, yanking a bloody piglet free by its feet. "What the fuck?" I cried out, my voice cracking. "It's mating season," explained Bena, as if this sight were no big deal. I felt bile rising up in my throat, and I fled through the barn doors before it came up. I couldn't handle seeing any more. Bena quickly dashed after me. "Where are you going?" she called out. "I'm getting the hell out of this place," I yelled. "I should have never come here." "Oh, but honey, you can't leave now." A tinge of sadness had crept into her voice, and that's what made me stop dead in my tracks and turn to face her. "Why?" Her lips had stretched into a frown. "Why do you think I gave you up, hon?" she asked in a quiet voice. "Because this town is a hellhole?" I asked sarcastically. Her frown deepened. "I wanted you to be free. That's why, as soon as the nurses cleaned you up, I told them to take you away." "What do you mean, free?" She sighed, before taking a peek into the barn over her shoulder. Inside, Billy could still be heard cursing at the growling mother, ordering her not to kick him. "Once you've stayed here for too long, you can never leave." Become a channel member today for early access, bonus videos, and special emojis only available to members. Check out the description below or click the join button for more info. If you'd like another way to help support the channel, please consider joining my Patreon page at patreon.com/JordanGroupHorror. As a patron, you'll get access to bonus videos and content. You'll be credited at the end of every video going forward, and if you decide to stay for 3 months, I'll name a character after you which will be featured in a Hollow's End story. Links to join the Patreon are in the description. Thanks everyone for listening. Please like, subscribe, and comment to help the channel continue to grow, and see you again next time at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Hope you have a great night.